So, the arena shooter genre is something that is within a paradox, so to speak, where the games are quite simple in theory and in practice, but the games are sorely lacking in a healthy pool of players when compared to the more popular free-to-play shooters released today, that it becomes harder to get into. It's a reality that the community has had to live with ever since the release of games like Halo Combat Evolved and Counter-Strike. Arena shooters, however, do still have an audience, and other newer channels, as well as other newer players, have even exposed themselves to the scene. It's a genre that offers a very unique flavour of multiplayer gaming that is fast-paced and fluid in terms of movement, and is close to being perfectly balanced. Everyone has equal access to weapons and resources, the same movement speed, and the same opportunities to kill each other. And we have a good portion of these games that exist at the moment, both old and new. What a good majority of them have in common though, is that they follow the template of Quake 3, the most impactful game ever made in the scene, and for good reason. And the game I'll be talking about in this video is another one that is not only criminally underrated, but is also one of the best ones out there that stands out more than some of the others in my opinion. Reflex Arena. Reflex Arena is a Quake 3 inspired shooter developed and published by Turbo Pixel Studios from Melbourne in Australia. Their goal was to create a modernized take using Quake 3's style of movement, its mechanics, as well as the movement and weapon tech found in that game. Back in 2013, it was announced initially as just Reflex, and it had the exact same goal. As you can see here, it looked a lot rougher in comparison to the final product that we have now, but complications with getting their project on Kickstarter, as well as getting enough funds for it, proved to be unsuccessful. But they wouldn't stop there. They would eventually remake the project into Reflex Arena, a more polished and realized version of what came before. Eventually it would get greenlit and then would go into early access. Early access is something I have a 50-50 relationship with. It's something that works for some games, but it's also a system that can be abused, culminating in projects that are left unfinished once enough money has been milked from it. But the team would use this system to implement new features over time, such as add-ons, widgets, an integrated workshop, mutators, an item box system where you get rewards each week, on top of a training mode that introduces players to the core gameplay mechanics. As far as training modes go in arena shooters, this one does a better job in comparison. It even teaches you some of the existing movement and weapon tech, such as circle jumping, rocket and grenade jumping, plasma climbing, strafe jumping, and more. Some of these mechanics would also be used within Quake 3, or more specifically, ChallengeProMode Arena. ChallengeProMode Arena was a mod made for Quake 3 that has an emphasis on player movement, and even includes some new mechanics on top of balance changes to the weapons. It's one of the more popular versions of Quake 3 to play, next to Quake Live. Reflex Arena, on the other hand, actually had team members that had previously worked on CPMA, which would explain why Reflex Arena resembles that version more than the vanilla version of Quake 3. And on that note, I think they did a fantastic job in that department. Arena shooters are known for being fluid, but this game takes it up a notch in that respect. Animations and physics feel very natural and smooth in their appearance, and ragdolls in this game only adds to the fun and chaos that can be found in this game. What is one of the biggest problems in arena shooters today is also in a sense one of its biggest strengths, and Reflex Arena plays to those strengths. Reflex Arena has a fantastic understanding of the Quake 3 formula, what made it work and what didn't work. The genre hasn't evolved for a long time though, and Reflex Arena doesn't exactly try to add anything more to it, but it certainly polishes the hell out of it, on top of applying rule sets and mechanics from CPMA Quake 3. It is very hard for a lot of newer arena shooters to stand out because of the issue with popularity within arena shooters. Games like Splitgate, Quake Live, and Quake Champions have a couple of hundred players daily. But what this means though is that the rest of the indie arena shooters though have a population that is significantly less, and this game in particular, almost not at all. You see, people are aware of this game in the community, but no one really seems to be playing it whatsoever. I checked the game's server browser and could only see one player, and I couldn't find a Discord or a Reddit community for this game. It sometimes gets brought up though within the other existing arena shooter subreddits and Discord servers, but other than that, the game is almost a graveyard. It's one of the game's biggest problems, and certain factors surrounding it haven't helped it a great deal either, like lack of exposure, not enough interest, as well as having a price tag over it. Now, of course, it was understandable at the time why this game would have a price point. Some companies can't afford the free-to-play model, especially if they don't have the resources to sustain themselves in case the game fails. And for an indie studio, if a game does bomb, it can be the death of that company. But it's been a while since this game has been released, and from what I've gathered, the team has been inactive for a while and don't seem to be having any other projects ongoing. It's already hard enough as it is for a multiplayer game with a price tag that can compete with free-to-play shooters nowadays. Before, it was better to get a paid one because of the assured level of quality, but now it doesn't make any difference whatsoever anymore because you have games like Warzone, Apex Legends, Fortnite, CSGO, Valorant, Team Fortress 2, some of the most polished shooters that you can find out there with hundreds of thousands of players playing them daily. Not to mention the fact too that the arena shooter genre has been in decline for a long time. And with the current landscape of the shooter genre, the competition is incredibly fierce. Even still though, this game is still really cheap, and even cheaper on a sale. But transitioning it to free-to-play may help it a bit more with the numbers, or the lack thereof in this game's case. Besides that though, the game itself is very polished in both gameplay and graphics. On the side of gameplay, you have the same Quake 3 formula, but with the CPMA rule sets and mechanics. Weapons are all functionally the same, as are the pickup items and power-ups. If you're already familiar with Quake or Unreal Tournament, then it's pretty much the same deal here in that regard. Graphically, it's one of the more appealing and unique arena shooters out there in my opinion. What a lot of arena shooters often struggle with is having a distinct or interesting art style that provides eye candy to the chaos of the arena. This game has an interesting display of meshing low poly and high poly models together. The game goes for a untextured look as well, but the way the patterns and the colors are utilized in the levels, as well as the character and weapon models, give off the illusion of there being textures. You can get a number of different skins for the different parts of your character, change the color of them, and it also extends to the weapons too. You can even load up the game's Forge mode and design your own patterns and publish it to the workshop. Speaking of which, the game's built-in workshop system is quite intuitive. It integrates with Steam's workshop, and you can download a metric ton of custom-made maps made from the game's own level editor. And the best part is you can download them directly within the game, and the system filter makes it much easier to find the more popular maps as well as the mods that you can obtain. There are also race mode maps that are similar to Quake 3 Defrag that you can play. And speaking of fan-made maps, people have even remade maps from Quake 3 Arena, like The Longest Yard and several others. Its unique art style is also enhanced by the buttery smooth sense of movement and gameplay flow, on top of the fantastic physics that make for some fun ragdoll moments. Now, despite the game being essentially dead besides having literally a handful of players during its peak hours, there's not much of a community that exists within this game. But the game does have bots that you can play off of, and you can even scale their difficulty by their number. The higher the number, the more of an aimbot that they become though, so you got to kind of balance it out for a more fun experience, especially if you're first getting into the game. The addition of mutators also adds more gameplay variety in the experience. If you want a precision-oriented experience, then you can add the Insta-Gib mutator, or if you just want to have every weapon available to you, then you can do that as well. There are also a ton of different game modes, but the core experience seems to be revolved mostly around 1v1 duels and deathmatch. If there is any hope of finding a match with another player in this game, then it will most likely be a duel session. And if you're not into that, then I would just move on if I were you. So is this game dead? Pretty much, yeah. But is it one of the best arena shooters that I've played next to games like Xonotic and Quake 3? Absolutely. There's a genuine sense of polish on top of its unique art style mixed with untextured models and environments, blending low and high poly together to make a visually pleasing game, and some of the community-made maps make for some amazing arenas to frag around in. I would implore you to give this game a go and see it for what it tries to do and what it accomplishes. I would like to see the studio make a return one day and make an expanded version of the experience, or even a whole new game entirely, since there was a lot of passion that was put into this game and there was a lot of talent behind it. But time will tell on that account. Definitely pick this game up. The price for this game isn't asking much out of you, and on a sale it costs as much as a can of Coke. But what you get instead here is hours of chaotic fun to be had in one of the most polished arena shooters out there today. Thank you for watching.